sponsoring this year's Women's Track to Digital Hollywood. Very excited to be here. We have a lot going on. I encourage everybody at some point today to visit our booth that is right outside these doors and learn about our membership program, our scholarship program, our sponsorship program. We have lots of different programs going on. We do all kinds of events throughout the year. So we not only come to conferences such as this, but we also do educational events. We do mentoring events, our famous speed mentoring event that happens once or twice a year, usually happens at CBS, where picture speed dating, but mentoring. It's a lot of fun. We give out scholarships. We have a huge annual gala that's happening this April. Digital panels, just lots of exciting things. So we'd love to have everybody come and be a part of it. We have lots of great things happening at our booth, so please stop by and say hi, introduce yourself. But without any further ado, I'd love to introduce the fabulous Josie Roman. She is the founder and managing director of Sea Light Enterprises, and she's going to be moderating this fantastic panel that we are all so excited to hear. So thank you everybody for coming, and look forward to the event.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for making it this early in the morning. And thank you, Laura, for your introduction. Thank you for sponsoring this track. Definitely, this is something that we need more of. And looking at the room, many people are, yes, stuck in traffic, but evidently not everybody considers this to be an important topic. We do. That is why we're here. And there are so many, many reasons why everybody should be here. Okay, we are going to talk about government, about technology, entertainment, and why this is important. Well, let's just go to some statistics. Definitely, research has proven that women have some natural skills in general that make us very, very important for every business. In fact, when a company has women in the executive positions, they have 75% more chances of being successful. Women-led tech companies achieve 35% higher return on investment and have 30% higher IPO valuations. That is just general statistics. Okay, women, as you know, make 75% of the purchasing decisions. So if you have a company that is targeting men or children and you are not considering women's opinion, you're making a big mistake, business mistake. And today, as it is, women only occupy 25% of the positions in STEM jobs. And we have 26 female CEOs in Fortune 500 companies, 28 female CEOs in Fortune 1,000 companies. That makes 5%, which is, according to some media, the biggest achievement of women in human history, everything. But if you look at the statistics overseas, those figures are embarrassing, really embarrassing. The world average of female top executives is 8%. South Korea has the highest, 30%, followed by the Republic of China, 19%. European Union has 9%. And we are way below the average. Okay. And in terms of entertainment, only 10% of women are showrunners. I can go on and on, figures to do with women in leadership. We'll talk about that, but let's introduce our amazing panel today. We have Council Member Laura Rosendahl. She was elected to City Council in 2012 and re-elected in 2014. She's been mayor pro tem, and she also was mayor from November 2011 to August 2012. She has a BA in psychology, and she also has a PhD in clinical psychology. She's practiced for over 30 years. She has many affiliations, past and present, and mostly to do with environmental issues and education. She is the liaison for the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District. She's the founder and current City Council liaison for advocates for Malibu Public Schools. And I'd like to welcome you. Thank you for being here. And I'd like to ask you why you made the decisions that you made in your career. Why did you choose psychology? Why did you run for City Council?
Okay, why did I choose the things I chose? That's a great question for a psychologist. Why do we choose the things that we choose? So I'll be listening to all of you when you speak. Actually, I'm fascinated by people. I'm fascinated by why we do the things we do, the way the world works, all of those kinds of things. And I've always been very interested in working with women, actually, for many years throughout my career. I specialize in eating disorders. And unfortunately, most of them are women. So I spent a lot of time doing that. But I was always attracted to psychology, in addition to my fascination with people and the way things work, because of the flexibility that I knew it would offer me in my career. And so I was able to do other things. I was able to have a family and be home and set my own schedule and a lot of those things. And that's actually one of the things that attracted me to politics. I grew up in a family that was very politically active back east, so it was kind of part of my DNA. My father was mayor of our little town, and then after my kids were born, and I just started to get involved with more of the political thing in my town. And then it just felt like a natural place to run for office, because I guess what happened was I was a volunteer for so many years, and you're always asking people and asking and asking. And there came a point that I wanted I wanted the power to be able to actually make decisions and not just hope that other people would make decisions. When I first ran in 2010, there were 10 people running, and I was the only woman running. And I won, obviously, and I was the top vote getter. And it actually helped me because I stood out from everybody else, and then just was reelected again this year. But I think that even in a traditional woman's role, public service, being able to give back to my town, to our society, other volunteer activities that I do is very, very important. But I think that being a psychologist and also working in politics, it needs to be collaborative, and you need to be respectful and understand other people and what motivates people and how to get things moving. And so it's always been two areas that have melded very well for me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Next, we have Amanda Morgan McAllister. She is the head of MSN Global Marketing for Microsoft. She's spent her career working in technology and the last 20 years in Microsoft, holding different positions in engineering, research, sales, and marketing. And she's just recently being promoted to this new position. And the same question to you, why technology, why Microsoft?
So I have to admit, I've only worked at Microsoft.
Okay.
And I have an answer for the first part of my life and an answer for the second part of my life. I stumbled into technology, and I stumbled into Microsoft. I was a psychology major as well. And embarrassingly, I chose it because it was the first, I went to Emory University. It was the first class that I made an A in. And when I came out to Seattle, it was in the 90s, and it was the recession before this recent recession. And I just wanted to try something different. I knew if I moved home to Texas that I would stay there forever. We're a people community, and they kind of wrap their arms around you and don't let you go. So I thought I'd be out in Seattle for a couple of years. And I thought Microsoft would look good on my resume. And I got my offer letter for like $9.75 an hour. And I was like, yoo-hoo, because I was above minimum wage. So embarrassing. I did not negotiate for a salary at all.
It still is above.
I'm a little out of touch. But so I joined, and I'll say that the beginning of my career, I was surrounded by people, that was when Microsoft was really in demand. Not that it's not today, but it was the Google, the Apple. And people were like, oh, I can't believe you got a job at Microsoft. But I would kind of look around and I'm like, so this is working and I'm not getting it. I don't feel it. And so my dad, of course, was like, well, just get Microsoft to pay for you to go to law school. Like, kind of figure out a traditional career path and get out of this like technology stuff. And I remember being very miserable and saying, you know what, I need to get control of my life and it's mine. Like I've been very haphazard about it until now. So I said, well, you're the only one that's going to help yourself. And I kind of made a list of everything that I thought made me happy about work. And I said, well, you got to figure it out because some of the stuff you haven't done. And I would go and find someone or to help me learn about it or give me an opportunity to actually work on a project. And I ended up leapfrogging from a sales job. I was such a bad salesperson. It was just a bad fit. Like, where's the book of all the jobs and how you figure out what you're going to be good at, right? And so I did a leapfrog into engineering. Mm-hmm. And that's where Microsoft really was, the kind of pulse of the company. And I had the opportunity to work directly with Bill Gates and Jim Alchin and Steve Ballmer. And but then I did another turn. So I was there for a couple of years and I said, we did this analysis, ironic to the news that Microsoft is in now, but we did this analysis of women in engineering and I got a big promotion and a big pay raise, about 20%. And everybody was like, oh, this is great. And again, I kind of did this self-assessment and said, I'm not applauding this as much as somebody else is. So again, I went back and I wrote a list and said, I want to try new things. And throughout all of this, I re-upped to Microsoft, and it's an amazing company with a breadth of 100,000 people. So it's been a bit of it's like going back to school almost. Like I didn't go and get an MBA because I got more through my experience with Microsoft than I would have, spending 2 years someplace else. So at this time, I kind of re-upped, and that's actually when I switched to marketing. And all my engineering people were like, "Oh, I can't believe you're going to the dark side, the voodoo side of things." And they're the ones at the end of the day that you toss stuff to. But I fell in love with it. And, my first project out of the gate, there was a Harvard Business School study written about the work that we did. And I realized, wow, it takes long. This is like 10 years into my career where I really found my footing. And as a result, it was I'm passionate. I love going to work. I had children and my husband at one point was like, do you want to stay home and raise children and be a full-time mom, or do you want to go back to work? And I seriously considered it because my kids are amazing. And I said, no, I get this passion from work and I think I can balance it all out. So I've re-upped kind of every phase of my life. And so I started haphazardly. And when I find myself being a little haphazard about it, I kind of make myself write that list and just make a decision or get out of it. It's like, if you're unhappy, then you can do something about it. And so it's been a wonderful 20 years. I just celebrated February 14th. My love affair with Microsoft started, and I just celebrated my 20th anniversary. And actually, this Friday, I have a dinner with Satya to celebrate all the 20 years. So it's been very exciting, but it has not been this charted course of, I feel like sometimes I read books, I'm like, wow, these women really knew what they were doing right out of college. And I've wandered around, but it's been an indelible influence. And it's why I've started speaking at conferences and also mentoring more women and men, because I feel like you think that you're out of control or you don't have, in this economy, you don't have control, but you actually really do. And I find, when you take control and you do what you're passionate about, that's when you're rewarded. It's the age-old saying. So that's me in a nutshell, 20-year nutshell.
Thank you. Okay, well, we have Carolyn Renzi. She is an American politician, environmental advocate, and former journalist. She is currently serving as chief of staff for Tom LaBarne. And this gentleman is a 3-term member of the Los Angeles City Council. And she is recently decided to run to replace her boss. She left. I have to say, she left for 2 years. You've been working with him for a number of years, and then you left to to help to be the program director of the Los Angeles Office for the Trust of Public Land. That is a non-profit organization that has been working to preserve public spaces like the Griffith Park and the landmark of the Hollywood sign. Why running for office?
Well, like everyone else, it's not like I charted a path or knew what I was doing at any point along the way. I did a lot of things by instinct. I was a reporter, which I did love, but when we moved to, I was a newspaper reporter on the East Coast. My family, my husband and son and I moved out here when our son was a baby, and I started working at People magazine. And as much as that was an utter blast, the most fun job I've ever had in my life. I covered the Oscars. You know, I got dressed up in fancy dresses and went to the Oscars and the Emmys and talked to movie stars. It was really fun. But I had loved cities, and I'd loved city reporting on the East Coast. When I was growing up, my family moved around from city to city following my father's career in the NBA. He was an NBA coach. And so I really got to see what life is like in different cities. You know, I shoveled snow in Buffalo in May. And so I wanted to do more city reporting. I started doing that, but it was very hard to make a living in Los Angeles doing city reporting, because mostly what people want from LA is reporting on the entertainment industry. I had a second child. I got involved in a tree planting project in my neighborhood because I sat next to a former Rose Bowl queen at a dinner, and she talked me into doing this tree planting project with her. And it was really fun, and I got kind of hooked. And then I raised money for this landscape median on Larchmont Boulevard, which is about 5 blocks from my home. And it got installed, and it was beautiful. You know, completely bizarrely in terms of my life arc, I became president of my neighborhood association. We had it declared a historic district. And I saw the impact that all these changes had on the neighborhood. We ended up planting about 900 street trees in our neighborhood. The neighborhood started looking much better. People started walking in the neighborhood more. That made the neighborhood safer because people were walking through it, especially early in the morning. Mm-hmm. And kids started riding their bikes to school because the median slowed traffic down. So this was such cool stuff. And I'd known the councilman, who's just has a larger than life personality. He is really a funny, great guy who loves Los Angeles. I had known him from when I was a reporter, and he offered me a job on his staff. And I thought, wow, if I could do this in the whole district, this would be so much fun. So that's what I did. I went to work for him 8 years ago. The big project that I worked on that was unbelievably exciting was he wanted to acquire 138 acres adjacent to Griffith Park. They were going to put junk up the hillside with McMansions right next to the Hollywood sign. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to buy the land. It was on the market for $22 million, and he had $4 million. And so I recommended that we partner with the Trust for Public Land, which is an amazing organization, a national organization that builds parks in low-income neighborhoods, again, to revitalize the neighborhood, and also acquires open land for people to hike or do other healthy recreation. So we partnered with them, and we got to the deadline. We were still $1 million short. I called on one of my old reporter friends, Karen Grigsby Bates at NPR, and she did this story on how we were trying to save this land and we just needed another $1 million. Anyway, who knew that Hugh Hefner listens to NPR? And so he heard the story and called us up and said, I'll give you the last $1 million. So I've actually been to the Playboy Mansion. Which is another thing I never thought I'd do in my life. So I did go to the Trust for Public Land for about 1.5 years. It was an amazing, amazing experience. We partnered, well, I won't go into all that. It was great. We built parks in low-income neighborhoods in Los Angeles and then watched the neighborhoods sort of organize around the parks to keep them safe for kids. It's a great thing. And also it helped to revitalize the community and make it healthier and safer and everything else. So the councilman really had asked me to run for his seat when he was termed out. And I always thought, what do I possibly need that for in my life? Life is hard enough. I have a family, and but then, you know, when I was at the Trust for Public Land, it ended up there was only one woman on the Los Angeles City Council. One woman in this was 2012 it was 2012.
Out of 15.
Out of 15
city councils
in Los Angeles. And so I just thought, yeah, I have to do this. And I'm so glad I did. And I encourage every single one of you to step up and take a leadership job or leadership position, even if there's a lot of risk involved. This has been the most amazing experience of my life. I am committed to winning, and I feel in my gut that I'm going to. It's a long, hard path. I'm working very, very hard, but it's great so far. So March 3rd, 2015, that's the election. Please make sure you vote if you live in Los Angeles. If you live in the 4th District, there's a campaign literature and back for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Thank you for your courage for running, because as you know, the numbers are very, very bad. We can talk about that later. Mayor Megan Sally Wells. She's the mayor of Culver City, and she was elected to City Council in 2012. She has learned firsthand how important the city services are, and she's working very hard to promote sustainability in the city and good education. She has 2 bachelor degrees from UCLA in World Arts and Culture, and then second one in French, right? And she's lived in Paris for 9 years. She traveled extensively conducting sociological research. Yes, and teaching.
That would be very different.
And also teaching volunteer teacher and also translator English. And the same question for you: why running is such a hard thing?
Yeah, running is hard, but probably not running is even harder for our communities. And I'm really happy to be on this panel just to hear everybody's stories, for one. And I felt a lot of similarity to Carolyn's journey, where you're working on a neighborhood level and you see the fruits of that work. When you're in local government, you can make your city, you can design your city to have a healthier population. And as an environmentalist, as a mom, and just kind of a conscious person, I think that is one of the most important things that you could possibly do. I know I'm getting kind of preachy and not talking about my biography. I'll go back to that. But I just want to underline the really big takeaway for me in serving in public office. Our democracy is really for the people who show up, and you just need to show up. Obviously, you have to work. It's not easy. Nothing is given to you. But in a town like Culver City, which has a population of 40,000, it's 5 square miles. It's a small town. We really define our community based on the feedback that we're getting from people in our community. And when you become one of those leaders, I was the president of my neighborhood association, you find that your voice is really amplified. So I was born and raised in Los Angeles, went to UCLA. I was my first political activism, I think I was in a high chair, and Richard Nixon was on the TV. And this is something that was told to me. I was a bit young at the time, but I said, "That's a bad man. That's a very bad man. My daddy said so." And when I was in middle school, I was in the LA Student Coalition. At the time, the big issues were apartheid South Africa, which was amazing to, protest in front of the South African consulate for years, and then be able to go to the celebration when apartheid was gone. That's pretty historic. And it's, as a child of the 70s, I felt like, what, we really did do something as a world. I went to UCLA. I studied world arts and cultures. I did the study abroad program in France. And that 1 year turned into 15 when I was abroad. So I was mainly in France, but traveling throughout West Africa, did a lot of field work in Madagascar, and was both a translator and a mom. And then I came back and got involved in my community. I had no career path. I mean, when you're studying world arts and cultures, what are you going to do other than, be a professor or just be somebody who's
great at a dinner party?
Well, awake and aware. And I think that there was, absolutely no clear plan in my life. But being a translator and working in government is a really good match, because what happens is you've got to, kind of administrative speak. And I don't know if any of you have any of you been to a council meeting before? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And have you ever read a staff report?
We're sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, it has to be really precise, but it's also kind of pretty dry, can be somewhat confusing. That we've got this kind of lingo. And being a translator, I found that my job, my job as a council member and mayor is to translate what this policy is and what this document is, and what we're doing as a city into what people need and want and desire and hope for their community. So it has been quite useful. Boy, I know I was making notes and I've thought about a lot of other things. In my, just to touch on the gender issue, Culver City will turn 100 in 2017. And the number of elected women on the city council in Culver City still fits on one hand. Which is why I'm recruiting. We have an election. I plan on running for re-election in 2016. But if we don't have another woman on the council by 2016, we'll stay with that one hand. And I know it makes a difference to have a woman on the council. I know my perspective is different. I know my priorities are different. When I became mayor, I set out a challenge to become the best city in the United States in which to raise children. Because if you have and you know this, if you have a community that is good and safe and focused on its children, it's good for everybody. And I don't think any of my colleagues would ever
Male
have
colleagues.
thought of that.
Right.
And because all of my colleagues are males, so.
Right. Thank you so much, Mayor. I could just continue what you just said. I'd like to mention a couple of things to do with the statistics on politics. We have, oh, okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay. We have actually more than 20 countries currently have a woman holding office as a head of state. More than 20 countries. And a total of 49 countries have already had a woman head of state. We are a little behind on that. All right. And then out of 189 countries, the United States ranks 78 in terms of women in government. The top 10 countries all have over 40%. Well, the United States is at a 17% on lower house and 20% on upper house. The top country is Rwanda. Rwanda has 56% women in government, and that is by law. After the genocide, they made it mandatory because actually women were the ones that ended the genocide 10 years ago. And I encourage you to look into this because it's a very, very compelling story. Then we have Andorra, Cuba, Sweden, Seychelles, Senegal, Finland. All of those countries are doing better in women in politics. So just for what it's worth, I'd like to give a round of applause to these women because they have courage. And so let me introduce you to Madeline Dinono. She's the CEO of the Gina Davis Institute in Gender and Media. This is the only research-based nonprofit organization working with entertainment and media to improve the gender diversity in children's entertainment through research-based programs. She has 30 years of experience in media, holding different senior and executive positions at different companies, including Universal Studios, Stars Media, etc. If you can talk about why you made the decision from being in entertainment, moving into nonprofit, what made you make the decision, and then share the research that is very, very profound.
I think all of us have a parallel career in terms of volunteerism and service, and clearly we have a panel full of women who have been leading service to their communities. And I got to a point where I had achieved a lot of success, and I felt compelled to use my power for good, as cliche as that sounds. And the question that I asked myself is, can I stay in the entertainment industry and not throw away a 30-year career? And can I make this switch to something that is more pro-socially, oriented? And I embarked on a quest and started asking colleagues that I had worked with, do you think it's possible? What could that look like? And to make a long story short, what I discovered in that process, there were a lot of my colleagues who had made somewhat of a shift. There was one gentleman who runs a major entertainment industry company, and he's like the chairman of Oceana. And then one of my former bosses had moved over from the entertainment to running one of the largest entertainment nonprofits. And at the same time, my boss, Gina Davis, had been formulating her theory of change because the whole institute was an accident for her. And she was looking for a different kind of person to run the business and to help realize her vision. And it was absolutely kismet that we came together. And it's one of those, probably the only time in my life where something actually fell into my lap. I'm not that kind of person. I'm the person who has to just push the boulder up the hill or chase it. Things don't just fall, that happen, stance for me. And that's how we came together. Now, there's a few considerations because I was probably the only person in Hollywood who wanted to leave a major entertainment industry job and make 70% less of what they were making in the nonprofit sector. So there are some really hard considerations. And one of them is financially, I can afford it, where a lot of people can't do that. Number two, I don't have children. I don't have to put kids through college. Number three, my parents are in good health and financially they're sound. So for me, I was able to make that transition, but for a lot of us, most of us have to keep that service volunteerism more of a personal thing, but I was able to make the shift. If you can make the shift, I think it's extremely rewarding. One of the things that I've noticed in nonprofit is you don't have ageism. And we know in terms of Hollywood, not only do you have ageism on screen, but you have ageism behind the camera. And I'm sure for a lot of you in the room, you know plenty of women who have been at a C level or EVP level, they hit their 50s and they get blown out of these companies. So in nonprofit, in that sector, age actually works for you. And I also wanted to look at longevity. How can I keep myself marketable? How can I keep working? And definitely nonprofit respects institutional, information. So that's how I got where I am today.
Okay. I'd like for you to talk about the research that you've done through the Institute. So
it's really interesting. You heard Josie talk about some global real world statistics. We've also talked about some of the other panelists about some of the statistics. And so what Gina noticed as a mom of a 2-year-old is that she didn't see any female characters in any of the programming that she was watching with her daughter, which was astonishing for her because she knew as an actor over the age of 40 how hard it is for women in Hollywood. But she thought, hey, kids stuff, it's got to be great for our kids. And it was out of that quest that she decided to get the answer to a very simple question. How many female characters are there in the programming that we're showing our youngest children? We're talking about under 11. So she raised a bunch of money, did a bunch of research, and that's how this whole thing got started. So fast forward, there's very few female characters to this day in terms of what we're showing across family films, primetime television, and kids show. It's still about 28 to 30%, where you all know we're over 50% of the population and over 49% of the working, population. So we started to look at careers, and I'm going to get specific to STEM and politics because that's what this panel is about. But in terms of careers, what we looked at is we looked at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And what we found when you look at, say, political sphere, you look at the legal arena, literally it's 0 to 5% across 12,000 speaking characters in family films, primetime television, and kid shows in terms of the number of female characters. And we took out rulers of galaxies far, far and away and royals. So we talked about real kind of positions. When you look at STEM, as Josie, I think, mentioned, women hold about 25% of all STEM jobs in the United States. In family films, it's 16%, primetime 21%, kid shows 12%. So we're not even showing our children that women can have careers in STEM. And then we took it a little bit further. We wanted to know, well, what does it mean? What kind of STEM job? What is media showing? Now, the Bureau of Labor Statistics doesn't have a category for STEM. It's kind of a made-up term. And that's science, technology, engineering, and math. And I'm sure some of you have heard STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And essentially what we found is, of the female characters shown in STEM jobs in primetime television and family films, it's about 60% in life sciences. So that's our doctors. That's our forensic scientists. And thanks to CBS and all the crime shows, we don't need any more forensic scientists. Now, they have very tailored blouses and Prada shoes at the crime scene, which is very interesting. But because we have shown so many female forensic scientists on TV, that the schools for those programs, the pursuit of that has gone up 75%. These colleges are besides themselves trying to expand. So we don't need any more forensic scientists. But in the United States in 2018, there will be 2 million jobs that we can't fill with boys or girls in the United States. 2 million jobs. That's the future of jobs, is in STEM. But yet, in terms of computer science, 7% in terms of media, TV, film, kid shows. Only 7% we're showing female characters in computer science. Same thing for engineering, and forget, math. So we're not showing our children that these are great careers. Media can really have a great influence. Now, I wanted to go over, we just finished and presented a global study, and we looked at the top 10 largest and most profitable theatrical box office markets. They're all developed countries. They're all the usual suspects. In terms of STEM, it's a 7-to-1 ratio of male to females. In terms of politics across all 10 countries, it's 9.6-to-1 in terms of male to female characters. So in terms of the global theatrical marketplace, we're not really helping. So when you look at those statistics, so that's just what we look at.
So talking about how that has an effect on people, you just mentioned that we don't need any more female forensic scientists, but Gina Davis played a role as a woman head of state, and there was a survey before and after.
Mm-hmm. So Gina had a very short administration, and it wasn't because of the ratings. It was actually infighting behind the scenes between the production company and the network. Anyway, and there was a woman, Linda Thaler Kaplan. She has a research firm, and she did a study and said of the adults that were familiar with the show. Now, that means they saw the show 19 times, because at that time they were still doing 23 episodes, which we don't do anymore. 19 times. That 68% of the people familiar with the show would vote for a female candidate for president. This is way before Hillary. I think it was before Geraldine Ferraro was running. I mean, it was amazing. So if you can see it, you can be it, which is one of our mottos. So by seeing her behind the desk 19 times, people thought, oh, that's not so odd. Okay, that looks familiar to me. So
Laura,
yeah.
Maybe you can tell about the psychology of where you can see, you can be.
Well, I mean, I think that we all do that when you have an experience with something, when you see it, obviously in a television show, something that on one hand, it's interesting because it's removed from you. It's not, you're not seeing a friend up there. You're not seeing anyone. But Miss Davis is obviously somebody that most people know, and she's a relatable actress. But yes, when you see something, when you're familiar with it, and that's why it's so important that if and when you do go to your own city council or supervisor or this or that, that you see women up there, because then it will have an effect on others being able, I know, and I live in a very small city. It's very well known, but it's a very small city. And yet people are like, oh, you're on city council? Women are on city council. So you can have an amazing influence on other people. And when you are in local government, that's when, because you do know the people in your town, you know the schools, you know this. I'm constantly inviting different classes. We also have Pepperdine College, University is in Malibu too. So we're always trying to get Pepperdine students to come and get involved. We've also done an internship program at the city where we happen, which is for high school students and for college students, so that they can get experience. What's it like working in a city and then getting involved in politics? What does it mean? Because Megan, I agree, things can be very dry, but it's also very exciting to be able to have an impact on your world and to have an impact on the people in your community. So I think that I'm not surprised by the research that you did, that when you see it, it just on a psychological level, and I think this makes sense for anybody, it just becomes more familiar and less scary. Yeah. And I think the same thing is true, that it takes courage to get involved in politics for men and women, but then you find that it becomes a natural part. It's not scary afterwards. There's nothing more rewarding and gratifying, I think, than public service. And that's certainly when you're involved in a nonprofit, when you're involved in politics, no matter how much you get paid, you're never getting paid enough for that, but it's very, very rewarding, and it gets easier. Even public speaking, I'm amazed at these women up here. Everybody spoke very easily and clearly and were interesting. And I'm going to take a guess, but I can guarantee that when they first started doing this, they didn't feel that way. And I remember my first public speaking was, I was PTA president, something when I was a hippie teenager, I never would have imagined my life would have been. I would have been aghast at the thought of even being a PTA member. But, and you kind of, you start in a small group and you have to talk to people, and then it gets easier and easier. And people say to me, how can you do that? And I'm like, it's not scary anymore because you get used to doing it. Yeah. And that's what I think women, actually public speaking, and I don't mean to get away from this, is often said to be the number one thing why people, and especially women, don't go into certain fields. And it's one of those things that the more you do, the easier it gets. So
one thing in listening to you and about the Institute, which is inspiring me because I'm learning as much as you guys, but about women in leadership roles and the approachability. And because one of the pieces of advice that I give to women is you got to be yourself, right? If you put yourself into a box, you're kind of not living up to your personal brand. And it sounds like a little bit of hocus pocus, but in my story, right, I got into a box and I went along and I was like, this isn't really me. And so when you see other leadership women, women in roles, women in politics, you think, well, I could never be that person. She's so perfect. She's this, she's that, smart, very formulaic. And so what I love about the research is like bringing real life to women into real life. And I have to say, I'm sitting up here on this panel, and although I'm daunted by running for a public office, like I keep thinking like, what an awesome dress. And she's got like biker boots on. And so you see these very successful women that are being themselves. And I think that, my two little girls, I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, I'm sort of amazed in the changes that we've made. And there's clearly, with all the stats we've been writing down, there's a lot more for us to do. But, my daughter said, Mom, why don't we go to STEM night? And I said, who wants to go to STEM night? And I'm mortified that I made that statement. I'm a woman in technology, and I made that statement. And she was like, it's really fun, and they do all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, somebody has changed my daughter's perception, or established, she's so young, it was established perception of science and technology, and she thinks it's really cool and wants to play these games. And I am backwards. I'm like, wow, here I am. And I really need to like kind of think about this in a different way. And so in some ways you'll find that I'm the eternal optimist, but that we've made so many inroads, but we have to be ourselves, and we have to live our brand and say, who do I really want to be? Who do I want to be? And what do I want to stand for, so that entertainment picks up more of us versus like perfectly thin women that have a Harvard MBA and, back in and the only things that were really wrong with them were their kooky love lives. They were perfect at work, but had a kooky love life. And it was like, I would go into these meetings and it was almost like all these men wanted to know about my kooky love life. And I was like, actually, it's kind of pedantic. I have a boyfriend and I've dated for a while. So. We got a question.
I wanted to piggyback on that, unless that question had to do with this particularly, but
We're gonna take a few questions at the end. Thank you.
I've heard, and there've been studies about women running for office, and there's apparently women have to be asked. Men will just go up and say, "Hey, I can do this. Look at me. Look at my accomplishments. I'm made for this. You'll be lucky to have me in office." But most women have to be tapped and have to be mentored, and that's kind of like the secret sauce of getting more women in politics.
And mentored too.
mentored,
Women like
yeah.
to be mentored,
Yeah.
which is a way for those of us who are to. I'm always looking for women to appoint to commissions and task force. And all of
And
those.
women don't like to toot their own horn. They like to be recognized naturally.
And by the way, raising money is kind of hard too. But so I was asked by somebody who was being termed out if I would run for his seat. And I looked at myself I'm like, wait a second. I've been a stay-at-home mom. I'm like the Uber volunteer. I don't have a master's degree. I don't have the profile. I cannot see myself in that role. And I had people work on me. Luckily the person who asked me had other people ask me as well. And they really, they took a long time, and, I got to the point where I was thinking, well, maybe I can at least bring some issues to the table. Because I still couldn't imagine myself in that role. But I thought, there are a bunch of things that are really important to me that aren't being done. So at least I can change the dialogue of the campaigns. And what really got me to run is that I didn't have anybody that I wanted to vote for. And I'm one of those people who has to vote. That's just my upbringing. And it was like, really? Oh, as soon as I started really paying attention, I didn't have anybody that I believed in. So I let myself take that step. And as soon as I started the campaign and started the candidates forums, I'm like, I can so do this. So you just have to give yourself permission, which is incredibly challenging. And I'm hoping that it'll get less challenging as we change, as we change the media dialogue, as we change this representation.
The culture in general.
Yeah.
I think the statistic is women need to be asked 7 times at least to run for office, and they have to think about asking for a raise 7 times, while men, they just do it. They don't think about it, they just do it. So, Caroline.
The real game changer for me, I have a 16-year-old daughter. I have a 25-year-old son. He's off living his own life, and he's a techno DJ, Gladiator. Listen to his music. But my daughter's 16, and this is the hardest year of her, certainly of her life so far. She's studying very, very hard. And I thought, I'm not even going to be around for her junior year. And then her senior year, if I get elected, I really won't be around that much. But she was like, go for it, Mom, do it. So the night that we kicked off the campaign, I forget, we had name tags for 75 people, I think, and 150 people showed up. It was so much more successful than we expected. It really kind of blew me away. And I had dinner with my husband and daughter afterwards, and she said 100 times, "I'm so proud of you, Mom. I'm so proud of you, Mom." And so I feel like it was worth it for that alone.
Right.
And her friends, her girlfriends, all want to work on my campaign. And I do think it makes a difference to the next generation. I think my own mother was very frustrated by being a housewife. And I've got to say that was not great for me, that she was unhappy. So even though I'm taking sort of this broad leap into the unknown, I think it does create it expands my daughter's image of what she can do. And that is fantastic. So do it. Do whatever it is that you dream of.
I'd like to ask just more question. We are not even getting started in the conversation, but we have just 5 more minutes to go. I know. So let's talk about resources that we have in government, resources that we have in technology companies. I know that there are programs to promote STEAM education and incentivize girls into getting into leadership, technology, entertainment, entrepreneurship. What can we share? Well, we talked about a nonprofit resource that I didn't know about for nonprofits to collaborate.
Right. Downtown LA on Alameda, there's the Center for Nonprofit Management that is a clearinghouse for information about the nonprofits that exist in Southern California, but also the foundations that exist, throughout the country and the world, and what kind of nonprofits they support. So that's one thing. The City of Los Angeles has when it puts out a request for proposals for bids on any kind of construction or a new project, a new park, a sewer line, new streets, they do have an incentive for women-owned businesses. So if a woman-owned business bids on the project and their bid is 10% higher than the lowest bidder, they will still get the bid. So it's that the City of LA does that for women and minority-owned businesses. So there are incentives. They need to be expanded. I will expand them to include 10% for local businesses so that we support businesses that are working here in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so interesting now that when you were talking about the roles for women, because I know, and I don't know the number, that the great majority of the writers are men. So who are they going to write about, or who they're going to write roles for, because that's what they know. Mm-hmm. So I think just on I hate to use the word, but a very organic level, it's all of us that are women and men. I mean, I have 2 sons, and I was saying earlier, I'd love for them to get into politics, but I'm really tired of white men in politics too. So, but it's important for me to show them what a woman can do. And my youngest was just starting high school when I first ran too. And I got all his friends involved in my campaigns and coming to city council meetings and doing things and volunteering. So I think just on a very personal level, it's sharing your story, getting other people involved, understanding the statistics, what's out there, what we need to do. Education is obviously important. Getting more women, involved in. We have 2 of the best, theater schools in the country, in USC and UCLA. Mm-hmm. Empowering women to know, girls to know that they will be accepted and that they can then go and do that. Because once you start on the ground level, we get more writers, mm-hmm. we get more women directors, and you start small and then it starts growing. And I think that's why I think in California, we have 25% of the city council members in California are women. So the more the ones that are on those councils, invite our youth and invite other women to participate, then it starts growing just in a very small way that it can get bigger.
Sorry.
I have 2 sons also, and I think it's great that now it's my husband. They're watching my husband cook for them, and he's also teaching them how to cook. Yeah. So I think that's, it's being a role model both for the support people in your life, to watch them really in that supporting role and feeling fulfilled in that role. Of course, he has his own career and everything, and I don't want to demean that, but we've kind of had a switch when I got on the city council, and I thought it was a really healthy family choice for us, especially having two sons. There are a couple of things we've done and are doing in our city. One is for the past 6 years, we've sponsored a really neat independent video game festival called Indiecade. Now, the thing about Indiecade, there was a lot of press about it in the LA Times recently. It's fantastic, and please don't poach it in Los Angeles. It's independent, so it's not even all screen based, so it's more creative, artistic, but most importantly to me, it's women run. And that's another industry where there are very few women, and the roles, the gender roles are pretty horrific in video games. And we know that the video game industry is a lot bigger now than the film industry. So that's a lot of media, that's a lot of eyeballs. So having me as a city supporting a festival like that is really proactive and positive, I think. Another thing we're about to do is municipal fiber optic network. And we're going to, of course, charge businesses for it, but we're going to give it to our schools. And that's another way of supporting all of our children, because of course our schools, as we invest in our schools, we are creating those pathways to healthy and equal career choices.
We were talking about resources to get kids into STEM. We're partners with Google, and what they have found, because they've been Google, Cisco, Microsoft. Microsoft has a huge educational program where they have a few 100,000 kids around the world that they're getting into STEM, including girls. But Google found through some of their most recent research that for girls, you have to get them when they're 6 years old, between 6 and 7. So where they were targeting high school, they've learned that they have to go after middle school. If you get the girl around 6, 7, then you can kind of keep that continuity. But if you target them even like 8, 9, it's almost too late. So that's a huge finding that they just found. But I would say in terms of best of breed, Microsoft, Google, Cisco, in terms of globally. There's something internationally called Girls in ICTs, which they have a whole nother name for technology overseas. And it's in April, and it's a giant effort across the entire world to get women and girls in technology, particularly in developing countries. So a lot of these corporations are really looking at community-based programs. And I think those are three of some of the best.
I think one of the resources that this is going to sound like, not a rocket science answer, but mentors, advocates, and influences. I think that we tell people, especially women, you got to go out and get some. And so I find that a lot of people, I mentor about 20 women at Microsoft, and but I mentor a lot of women. Now, I also mentor a lot of men, but the way they use me is very different than the way the women use me. And, our CEO, Satya Nadella, is in a women's crisis right now, for lack of a better term. The elephant in the room. And one of the things that I thought, and I've worked with him, he's a lovely, lovely, lovely human being. So that he would bring up karma is absolutely not surprising to me. But I wonder, and I don't know the answer to this at all, if he's mentored a woman. Like, I wonder if one of his, if he has been mentored by a woman, or if he's been influenced by a woman. And I say that, and I do not know the answer to it, but I do know that the men that I use as influences and advocates, I impact them as much as they impact me. And so I think that when I have this group of women, and I think, go out and get somebody else, because, you need a mentor, advocate, and you need influences. And it doesn't have to be this male-female thing. And I think it absolutely, like, a lot of women come to me when they're starting families, and how did I do it? How do I juggle everything? Absolutely appropriate, but men have to do that as well. And so by balancing it out, because, again, we all we impact the world we live in, and we are impacted by it. And I think that that's really critical to say, you know, ladies, we got to go out and kind of inject ourselves and be a part of, you know, our community, our society, you know, the technology, everything. Because if we don't, and we're very passive about it, then we're, you know, I can change my world, I can influence my family and my career, but how do I influence the world around me? And I think that if Satya had mentored me, he might not have had that response. So he might have had a much broader view of like, wow, this is really a struggle, and women don't even know how to have this conversation.
So what? Oh,
I had one. Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say, I hope we have room.
Yes, we are going to
Yeah.
open it up for questions in just a couple more minutes.
One last thought too. There's an initiative right now to raise the minimum wage. You mentioned the minimum wage.
Yes.
It's going to go up to $10 in all of California by 2016. But as many of us know, that ain't going to get you an apartment. You know, that's not going to really help you to live. And I don't know how widely known this statistic is, but 2/3 of minimum wage workers are women. The average age of minimum wage workers is 35. So we're not talking about teenagers. We're not talking about guys. We're talking about women. And that's something that in California, at least, not every state this is the case, but in California, cities can raise the minimum wage. And Mayor Garcetti has an initiative to raise the minimum wage to $13.25 by 2017. I'm hoping I can do the same in Culver City. And that is a really tangible policy solution to making things better for women and everybody else, of course.
And of course, we have that 77% equal pay. We need that. A latest survey that I saw says that in our area, in our community, in the west side of Southern California, the pay gap is higher than the national average, and that is not really good. We're talking about a lot of technology, Silicon Beach, and a lot of entertainment. So we're just gonna have to take 2 questions. We're out of time. Okay.
And this is for Madeline and for Amanda and everyone else. Before my fabulous entertainment career, I was an investment banker and a securities lawyer. And when I see women in those roles on television, they're I'm just going to say it, they're fucking their boss. Or there's a recent TV show that thank God got canceled after 2 episodes where the main character was a female attorney, and the opening scene of the show, she walks in carrying coffee for everybody. And are you looking at all at the qualitative portrayals of these women? Even like you can check a box, okay, they had a female attorney. And the reason I ask you, Amanda, is that, you know, MSM, I know, is now becoming a content producer. And it would be fantastic if those kind of things got looked at. Every show, every female investment banking character on television is either a single mom or sleeping with her boss. Wow. And I know as a screenwriter, I've gotten this note so many times about my female characters. Oh, why isn't she a single mom? So she's motivated to try and make all this money. And I was like, well, I was motivated to make all that money. I was never a single mom. Yeah. But the so many little girls. I grew up in a house where nobody ever worked in an office. I was the first person in my home. When I walked into my law firm, I was the first professional person in my family. I didn't know what I was supposed to wear in my clothes. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to buy cheap hose at the Walgreens. You know, these are things I learned the hard way. But thank God Ally McBeal wasn't on television when I was in high school, because I would have thought that's how I was supposed to behave as an attorney. And I'm really concerned about those kind of portrayals. I'm really concerned about little girls who have no clue how they're supposed to behave. So they see one of the girls on CSI, you know, what kind of, is that being examined as well? And then what are we doing to fix that?
So the question was about the actual roles that women are portraying.
The answer is yes. So for example, female characters are 4 times as likely to be shown partial nudity, sexy attire. It's about 30%, even in children's shows, which we're looking at kids shows for 11 and under. So that's really ridiculous. Like, why is there any type of partial nudity, sexy attire, et cetera? So we do look at that. And for us, we're more of a B2B than a B2C. So this is the data that we present directly to content creators. So that's kind of what we do. As citizen journalists and consumers, you have a voice. All of these companies are looking at Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. So you have a lot more power in terms of voicing your opinion. So there is a lot you can do from that standpoint, but that's what we do with the data.
Amanda?
Well, so I don't come from the content creation side of the business, so I can't really represent it. But I will say, and I think I can speak for the entertainment industry as well. Don't quote me on this. People are creating what is desired. And I do feel like, people with great intentions go out and author content or create entertainment. I had the chance to work with Nancy Tellum, who started our Xbox Entertainment Studios. And we've now kind of are starting to decommission it a little bit because of business strategy. But, and you look at this bevy of pitches and content that comes in, and then you kind of look at the demographics and you see, well, and then I think people with best intentions get formulaic because you want your show picked up or you want it. And I think for me with Microsoft and the MSN, so we've just launched a new experience. And so we're moving from creating our own content to curating. And it is kind of amazing to go and spend an hour or two on my homepage every day, because that's my job. So I get to play on the internet. And so I'm trying to not customize it too much and not tell them too much about me so I can experience. But what I click on is embarrassing to me. I mean, I'm an Us Magazine reader. So I was like, wow, what a great first job, People Magazine. And, when I was first working at Microsoft, I would get on planes and put Us Magazine into PC world and then read it on the plane. Now I just open it right up and be like, yeah, I'm an Us Magazine. But I click on the Women's Day article. I click on a lot of Red Book. Clearly I'm trending towards my mid 40s. And I said this in a meeting, and it was full of men. And I'm, the head of MSN kind of laughs, and I said, yeah, I am my demographic. And so I think in some ways, I love that this change is happening so that my little girls have different influences. But I think that I think there's this gap, right? Because we're monetizing everything, and if nobody watches it and you can't make money off of it, then nobody's gonna create the good stuff. And so I don't know the solution. I know that there's that problem, right? And so it's the Princess Diana, when she died, I was like, I am not gonna read these magazines, but then I read the magazines. And so I think it's this conscious effort that we have to make to, are we being the best people? Are we feeding the monster, or are we doing something different? And how do we support? And things like, I was in a hospital bed for a month, and so I watched a lot of television, and The Good Wife, I was like, wow, this is really kind of a good show. And I hadn't, and I got addicted to it, and then my husband liked it, and it was a good influence. And so it's how do we double down on that, and how do we make them, and is it, do we give a little bit of funding? Is this where maybe public support comes involved, or do we kickstart some things that we know aren't highly monetizable but need to get the outreach? I don't know, but I think that you bring up an excellent point that needs more thought, because until you can make money on it, that's why every technology kind of wins or dies by the porn industry. If porn can make money, anybody can make money, and that's embarrassing.
But the Good Wife is making money.
It is, yeah.
The Good Wife is one of the last traditional 1-hour dramas still on television and still making money. So I think there is a hunger for that level, that type of programming, that smart programming that features women.
Yeah.
It's just, we watched Borgen, which is a Danish drama about the first female head of state. And we had to, jump through hoops and, do the limbo to get access to the programming so that we could watch it. It shouldn't be hard. Shouldn't it be harder to get porn than it is to get a decent 1 hour drama?
Basically, if nobody watches it, they will discontinue. And so that is where the consumer voice has to stand up.
Yeah, it is.
One more question. We're out of time. Okay.
My question is about leadership. So in both the film industry and in politics, there's an issue of women in leadership, and all of you I consider to be leaders in your industry. And I'm one of those women that you were talking about with more of a love life who's a too. So my question is, I had read a book about male CEOs, and they were trying to see the consistency in how they had become leaders. And was it their neighborhood? Was it, and the only thing they had in common was 99% of them had a stay-at-home wife.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at, and you can't quote me on this one, my friend Rachel Sheckman is like Forbes 40 under 40. And so she pushed the publisher and said, on your list of women, Martha Stewart, Oprah, all of these, they aren't married. They are older. Oprah doesn't have children. You went through some of the businesses and they had stay-at-home husbands. They had a very different dynamic than I think your average American family or your average American woman working in the world today. And I think, again, it kind of goes back to, I don't have a solution for it, but I think that I'm kind of so proud of where our society is for using our technology to rise up against. And this is something that I think, like when I kind of read that, I disengaged from Forbes magazine. Right. It's like, I haven't disengaged from us yet, but maybe I'll do that on the plane right now. But be my brand. But I think that's where it's like, why weren't more women asking that question than my single friend, Rachel, who then pushed her and was probably the only pushback and oh, by the way, the publisher is a woman. So, it's like, what have we architected here? This list of women that is unachievable to me. I can't even aspire to be one of them. I don't know how that would work. It's not a formula that is appealing to me or achievable.
Or people don't relate to it. And I think that relatability is so important. And that's why when there's many different platforms and phases to start from. I was talking earlier about, get involved in your community or in your work or in nonprofits, all of these different areas. And I think you make a great point. Just learn to accept yourself and work forward from that point.
I think push back. Let me just add, I think we just have to push back and we have to say, this is not acceptable. And then kind of come together, both men and women. It's not, I think many men on that read that list would be like, it would be great if I had.
The study they did with the Supreme Court justices, that the ones, or judges, I think they were all judges that had daughters, they voted differently on women's issues lawsuits. And so it's that life experience, it's that understanding, it's that pushing back for men and women that's so vital.
Policy, that's my lens. And if we're providing universal pre-K, if we're providing childcare, if it is no longer more expensive to work and have somebody take care of your child, then you will have more parity. I, lived in Paris for 9 years. There's a lot more parity there. And it's because they have universal pre-K.
Yes.
It's because you have subsidized childcare. It's because, if the problem is that
a year off for maternity leave and then having your role to come back to, I was like, wow,
there are actual policy solutions to these problems. And what happens is it just changes, it's not just on mom anymore. And that's how you evolve as a society, but we're definitely not there yet.
Okay. just some final thoughts. We're super over our schedule.
And I have to go catch a plane. My car has been like, where are you? I'm going to leave without you. So I might have to.
There
duck
isn't
out
any
here pretty
panel
quickly.
here after, so I'm taking advantage of that. Final thoughts?
Yeah. So in terms of the work that we do, when we look across some of our statistics, when you compare that to the University of Denver does a benchmark report, and essentially women are between 17 and 20% of all industries, law, academia, politics, etc. And in media, it's the same thing, where when we look at secondary characters, background scenes, women are only 17%. And so what we look at is it will take a long time for women in Congress to go from 16.8% to 35%, but media can fix it overnight.
Yes.
Media has the power to show life as we would like it to be, as an art form, and then let life follow it. So it's the only sector where you can immediately change the landscape overnight.
Yes. And that is the power of seeing where you can be.
Yeah. That's a very.
So we all have to go write stories about powerful women. Leave right now. Let's do it and get them on TV.
We have some here that can be.
I just want to thank everyone for coming and being interested and taking the message and wanting to hear the message. I think that's the first thing. When you said media can do this, can show it already is. I mean, life is 50% women or 52% women. So it's more, how do we get people to actually reflect that in the areas that it's not reflected in yet.
Yeah, and a lot of us actually met at a National Women's Political Caucus meeting. So there are, like, from the political realm, there definitely are more and more mentoring organizations, and they actually give campaign donations, which definitely helps. So if you are interested in this, there is support. There's a merge as well. There are a lot of, I guess it's Emily's List, and there are people who have been working on this. It's a well-known problem. There was a study in September in California that just showed that women are, just over 50% of the population, 28% in elected office in the entire state. So we know we can do better. In fact, in years past, we have been doing better. Yes. But there's hope, there's support, and there's definitely a need. So you should definitely consider stepping up to the plate.
Okay, we're out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.